Hey, Chamber members, Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing and Communications at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. Today I'm joined by...
I'm Kasey Blouse. I'm the owner of Blouse House Creative. We do graphic design, paper printing, signage, and promotional items.
So, Kasey, it's not been that long since your last episode. So, one thing I usually talk about is kind of the success, but we're going to wait until your next episode to get an update there. Instead, I want to see for you personally, and so I'm going to ask this in two parts. For you personally, and then for you professionally in your business, what do you feel constitutes failure?
I think that's a really hard question because everybody thinks about it differently. But the truth of the matter is that everybody fails. No matter what, you have to learn to embrace it and learn from it and do all, the things to try and not do that. But, that's the only way you grow and become a better person and do the right things is knowing that you already did the wrong one and recovered from it. So, I've really tried to, I guess, embrace that when I have to. I think really true, failure for me would be not trying or giving up, because life's hard and babies are hard. Running a business with babies is really hard, but if I just quit one day, then to me, that's okay, you just didn't even try to, make that right. Or even if something happens, okay, I messed up this one project and just calling the person and being look, something happened, owning up to it, that kind of thing. That if you didn't do that, I would consider that failure, not, owning your mistakes and learning from them and growing as a person and that kind of thing. So
I agree with you. I mean, for me, failure is when you stop. Like you said, everybody is going to go through moments where you get something wrong, something happens, something stops you. But as long as you're learning from it, I feel like it's still progress. And honestly, I feel like you learn more from failure than you necessarily do from success. I think back to looking at it from a marketing standpoint. When I can go and look at the metrics and we post an ad, if the ad is posted and I think I've got a really clearly defined audience and then no one responds to it, I can at least go back and say, great, something was wrong with my metrics. I was either targeting the wrong people, the message was wrong, versus if it goes well, that's awesome, but it's harder to take away because if next year I run the same ad to the same target audience and it doesn't go well, I haven't learned yet who it's good for.
Right. I think that's what marketing is, in general is trying one thing and another. So you have to be okay with that.
Right.
If you're going to want to do it right and figure out the best thing for you.
It's one of those things that I know all of our members that are in, insurance, that are in financial advising, they've got the pieces that the word guarantee can't even leave their mouth. I feel like if someone in marketing goes, I can guarantee this, they're lying.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because it's trial and error. And sometimes it sucks, but you have to have that error to learn. So that I think covered a little bit of both of them. But on the business side, specifically looking at failure and looking at those things, you mentioned something there that I really thought, which is owning up to your mistakes in those pieces. How do you approach that? Because I know personally, when I do something wrong and someone's like, hey, and I can tell they're upset, I'm so anxious that I'm immediately oh no, they don't like me anymore. How do you manage that in terms of, your own personal process versus, hey, as a business owner, this is what I'm doing to step forward?
I'd like to tell you that I'm fine and I deal with it really well, but I don't because I'm an emotional person. I think just before those conversations, or even if you realize it in the moment, I did that the other day, I had somebody came in to pick something up and it was on the wrong cup. And I was I'm so sorry. And just being super authentic, I think in those situations, I really totally just like space it. There's obviously always a lot going on, like apologize, making sure you kind of like get it done. I think setting expectations when things like that happen, like calling and apologizing, but having a plan to fix it, I think helps me stay calm and not get so like emotional about it. So before, if I know something's messed up and have to make a phone call and that kind of thing, I try to like talk myself through it and work out a plan before I would like call and be like,
Right.
hey, so sorry. Like, I mean, that happens sometimes with me too, with like, well, something came up and the install has to be moved, but having a plan, I think really helps me deal with it. Because I feel like that at least there's progress in the chaos, and there's an answer to, the problems already.
And so sometimes I wonder if I'm like extra harsh in this, because when I go to do some of those things, there are times where I'm like, okay, I should tell them, hey, why this happened. But then I also hit myself where I'm like, it doesn't matter why. I almost feel like sometimes, even if it's a good excuse, it's an excuse. How do you manage? I like you said, being fully authentic with them and just being like, hey, I spaced. How do you manage that versus when someone is upset with something that you did the job right, you did everything you were supposed to do, everything you're contracted to do, and they're upset for something that is out of your hands? How do you manage those separately?
I think that's a hard thing. I've had a few cases of that, and I think it's like trying to ask questions to understand better, because I feel like usually it's like, oh, well, I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and like so I think like asking questions to really figure out what they're upset about, I feel like is the best way I've found so far. Not that it's perfect, because they're still upset regardless. And I've tried to like, if I can, depending on what the job is like offer like, can I redo it for a discount? Because since I did what I'm supposed to do, like I want you to be happy with it, but I also am running a business and have to, kind of manage both sides of it. So, but things like that, like, because I'm like a people person and honestly a people pleaser most of the time until I get to the end of my rope. But, I get upset about things like that because I want people to love it and be all excited about it, as excited as I plan them to be or want them to be or am myself. So, I think that I have a really hard time with that. And I feel like I do a pretty good job handling it in the moment. Later, I might be like, oh, I'm going to cry about this. No, I'm just kidding. But be upset about it and, talk about it with trusted people I know. Be like, how did I do this? That kind of thing.
And I think that's something to, on the consumer side, there's nothing wrong with getting something done and realizing, okay, this isn't what I thought it was. The business owner still did the right thing, and having to manage your expectations on that too, because I don't believe the phrase, and it's not the full phrase, the customer's always right. I don't believe that. For those at home listening, the full phrase is actually the customer is always right in terms of taste. Which means even if you think that couch is the ugliest couch in the world and they love it, great. That's the most beautiful couch in the world. So yeah. So transparently, we talked about printing stuff, and we're going to talk about that more in the second half of the episode, but I want to break down this another step forward. As a business owner, where do you manage yourself in the here's what I'm doing to please versus here's what I'm doing to be good at my job? And I mean that in that, like, I think it comes into marketing at times too. There's a difference in, hey, I'm discounting my services because I'm doing a special versus, hey, I'm discounting my services because I'm learning something new. Or something I heard recently was, if you want something for a portfolio piece, always do it for free. Don't do it for cheap. Because if you do it for cheap and someone's still paying you, they still own all of the creative control in that to a degree. If you're doing it for free, you are the owner of that. So how do you manage that as because we talked last time, you're doing some expansions, you're adding some different things at different times. When do you know, hey, this is the moment where I'm starting to charge my full prices versus this is the moment I'm discounting?
I think that changed for me just in talking to other people in the industry and having conversations around that from like when I started versus now. And like, you have to know your worth and you have to know that it's okay to charge what you know you're worth. Like, I went to school for design. I've learned the printing. I've done training. I've done the things to be able to do what I can do. And I think a lot of that enables you as you're expanding. And even if you're learning something new, like especially in printing, even design, I would say like it's all related, like there's some things they all connect. And so because I know this, learning this new thing is still gonna, there's still a learning curve, but it's not gonna be like, oh, I'm learning something brand new. It's like there's still, if I didn't have that, then I think I'm more okay with, maybe like charging some because of the expertise I already have and being able to do this, even though it's new. I have offered some discounts when I've been like trying out a new like product or something, like, oh, hey, I've never printed on this material or something, like, why don't we, do it or do a try. I do a lot more like, let's try one and then, or like give me some time and then we'll see like what, that doesn't always work because everybody wants everything like tomorrow, but
right.
And that's just a whole other conversation.
It is because so I was talking to Paige this morning and we talked about Nutcracker, and my wife is editing that for her. And she said it is taking that different approach. When you have a professional doing something, it's going to take them the amount of time it takes to professionally get it done. But that doesn't mean that's the experience someone has. If someone's used to, oh, my cousin Bobby took the video of this, I had it tomorrow. And that's because it was done without professional editing and all of those pieces. When a professional's doing it, they have to work on their timeline. And it can't be, she said the day after the Nutcracker, some people were like, oh, is the video ready? And it's like, no, absolutely not. It can't be.
Yeah.
I feel like especially when it comes to certain design elements, that's got to be even worse, because I've seen on Everything Christiansburg the number of posts that are like, hey, I need a t-shirt done and I need it done tomorrow. Can you talk about why that's just not a feasible thing?
I think, and I think this is one of the things that, like, education is a huge thing. I feel like in being a business owner and educating people about your world because they don't understand it. So I love this question. I get that a lot. Like, oh, and like if it's like a simple like copy, like, yeah, we can do that tomorrow. But when it involves like, oh, there's design, or even if you're just sending me a file, like getting it set up to print and get it on the printer when there's already things scheduled to be on the printer. I mean, there's so many other balls in there, if you will, of like things that are happening that aren't, you would have, customers would have no idea about. I mean, they know you're busy, but they don't really know what that looks like. You know, like I do have two paper printers, but they're both kind of better at certain things. So like, I don't really like to print cardstock on one of them because it just doesn't print as well, or only if I have to do it in an emergency. So it's like, if I'm trying to give you the best product for what I'm charging you for, then I have to have the time to be able to do it. Or also, we all have personal lives too. Like, there's no reason, like, just because I own a business doesn't mean that I don't have a family and things that I make time for. Like, I will not be shy about that. Like, there's, if my kid's sick, then I'm going to be home and be sick with them. Like, occasionally I'll come in the office when they're sick, but that's really hard. Nobody wants to do that. I'm not my best self there, so I'm not doing the best thing for you even. So I think it's a hard thing to like get people to understand. And once you get into that, like when you do one thing like super fast for people, they expect that every time. And I've run into that because sometimes I am super quick. Like, people used to tell me, oh, go to Kasey, she's really fast. I'm like, no, let's not keep saying that.
It depends. It depends.
It really is project based. So,
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think especially, I mean, one, we're getting ready to have kids, so I'm very hypersensitive about that. I've shared it on here many times, but the thing that got me even here was in 2021 when my brother died. I was at his the viewing, and for 3 hours straight, there were people coming in constantly, and it was that moment that made me realize just how much it is about community and how much community takes to. And so I'm one of those that right now I feel like I'm working extra hard. I'm putting in extra hours. That's because I know when we get there, when baby comes, I have 4 weeks parental leave. For 4 weeks, I'm on parental leave. And I want to make sure things are prepped, but at the same time, those boundaries are a part of small business and they need to be. And I feel like as consumers, we all should take this in and wherever we're going, that's one of the prices that's built into running a small business or supporting a small business is accepting that, yes, today it might be 24 hours. That's not the always, because we have to respect those boundaries of people. I mean, there's a reason that corporations like Amazon can get away with stuff and overwork people. They're a corporation. They're not a mom and pop that you are going to see at Walmart on a Sunday afternoon. And on Walmart on a Sunday afternoon, have a brief chat, but don't ask people about, hey, is my sign done yet? Don't know. I'm getting milk. Leave me alone.
That happens to me all the time.
Super pessimistic, I know.
Yeah.
But I just feel like having that boundary, it's hard. I mean, for me, it's really tough. I've been at the chamber and I'll be working until 9 o'clock and all of a sudden I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. I should have been home hours ago. But sometimes that's a balancing act and sometimes the seesaw goes more one way than the other.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to talk more about the printing side of things and kind of walk through those pieces. Because like you said, the cardstock versus the paper, that's fascinating to me. I'd love to hear that part of the process and kind of educate people on what printing is. Because I think we all go, oh yeah, you can just print it like I do at home, right? And it's not the same. Starting from the small details to the big ideas that you want to communicate, Blouse House Creative will pour their hearts into helping you connect with your audience. Their priority is to cultivate your message in a way that is authentic to who you are. They want to take your knowledge and ideas and craft them into effective products for you. Started in August 2018 as Blouse House Printing and Design, Blouse House Creative has been serving their customers from their current location since February of 2022. It is locally and female owned right here in the New River Valley. They are ready to serve you with their printers, computers, laminators, plotters, cutters, and binding machines for any of your graphic design or printing needs. Their passion is being creative while still being practical and efficient. For more information, go to blousehouse.org. That's blousehouse.org. Back to the episode. All right, we are back, and quickly I want to give a shout out to Grand Home Furnishings for providing our chairs, our rug for this room. It makes it feel nice and cozy, and especially thank you for the rug. When I told Steve we needed a rug, he was like, why? I was like, sound dampening. And I don't know that he fully got it, but it's fine. So thank you, Grand, for all of this. It's really comfortable. All right, going into the other half of this, talk us through that printing process of, I'm going to say the most basic thing I can think of. I have a flyer for an open house coming through. What is the process for that? And why does it take longer? And why does it cost more than if I were to print that at home?
Okay, so a couple questions for you about your flyer.
Great.
Right. This is what I need to know. Are we doing, and we'll talk about what these are, a full bleed print or not? So what that entails is, do you want a white border around your print? Because if not, you have to cut it down. A full bleed, the color would go all the way to the edges, which I'm a fan of, because it looks more professional, in my opinion. But not opposed to it, depending on the design, I guess is what I should say, because some of them look okay. But so that would be the first question I would ask, because that depends on what you printed on. And then like size, all those kind of things, because if it's, depending on what size it is, if you want full bleed, how big is the paper that we need to do it on? And, you know, there's always limitations for stuff like that. And that also is what affects the price a lot of the time. So
I'm going to ask this like I'm a consumer for the first time coming in. with full bleed, does that mean some of my image is getting cut off?
Not if we have a bleed in the design. So if you already have a design, we might have to add that. Or if I'm designing it, I always put it in there. So
I asked that because some of the stuff I've done, I mean, when you get it from someone, it doesn't go all the way to the edge. And so you have to make that adjustment. If the Chamber magazine, for example, the majority of the ads that come through that are full bleed, but there are some that come through that aren't. And then you have to make the decision, well, how much of that white overlay are we going to have? How much is designs look good? Let's talk in that about the color aspect, because I think that's another thing that people don't necessarily think about. Whenever I print something here at the Chamber office and it has our Chamber logo on it, it is not the right color. Why is that?
So there's so many factors in this. If you're using ink or toner, because there's ink-based machines, toner-based. If I can tell anybody, buy a toner-based machine if you're going to get an at-home printer. It'll save you money. You get a lot more like papers through it usually than ink, and it's just better in my opinion. But that's what we have toner-based at the office as far as paper printing, not signs and things. That's totally different process. So, but as far as paper printing, toner is my favorite thing. But anyway, so losing my train of thought of what we were talking about because I got excited about talking about that.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. But anyway, so toner versus ink, and also how everything's calibrated. So your printer is calibrated a certain way, your computer and your screen are calibrated. So I could put two screens up, like phone, laptop, and desktop, and I guarantee you the color will look different on every single one. That is why having your color codes are really important, and knowing those. If you have a logo and things and don't know them, find out what it is. PMS colors are great too. And any kind of color code you have that you can, like, this is what it is, and this is what I want it to be, and this is what I definitely don't want it to be. And just making sure you kind of check that. Even in printing, when you have those, sometimes they don't, like, I usually try and check, like, do I have something else that they've printed or that they've done that I can check it, like physically hold it up to it and check it, or let them see one before I print all 500 of them. You know what I mean? So that's a huge thing for me. And I like to do that because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but that's okay. And so, those kind of things can definitely really affect it. But just like everything, it always is going to print just a little bit different anyway. Like even if I print it on two different machines, like it's going to look slightly different, even though they're both toner and they came from the exact same file. Like it's just part of it. And you can calibrate it even, and it's still sometimes going to turn out different because that's just how it is. And so paper printers are really weird. And this is like a weird random fact, but they all, like toner based machines, there's always one toner cartridge, like it's CMYK. One of them always is like the problem child. And so it will do funny things and then like just not print on there. And you're like, okay, cool. So that why is that green when it's supposed to be blue? Like there's all kinds of things like that are weird little quirks about printing everything doesn't always print exactly even on the page. There's rollers and they get off, and it's just, if the machine's not lined up correctly, like it's going to mess up. So,
and I think that like comes across like in every industry to a degree too. Cause I mean, I think about my background in audio, where I could be running the same exact thing the same way I've been for weeks, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. And it's just like, why? What's going on? Why? And then sometimes I always have hated this, but it's so true. Sometimes it's literally, I had to unplug it and plug it back in. And then it's like, oh, cool, you're working.
Right.
But I mean, I can see that here at the Chamber on our printer. I can print two things back to back, and they're not always going to be perfectly the same. I want to go back to your derail for a second. What is the difference between the toner and the ink? I feel like I'm gonna try to explain myself and see what people criticize me for, because I think about like when we go to empty the toner here at the Chamber, Ink. I immediately am
really
like
ready
regretting
for
this. I don't fully know, but to me, ink it's the liquid.
Mhm.
Is toner, because when we pull it out, it's all powder and all of that. What is
It's powder.
It's powder.
Mhm.
Okay, great, cool. That's what I wanted to make sure of.
Easier to refill. It's messy, but
it is. It's funny. I had to change our toner this past week while Steve was out of the office, and usually he's the one to change it. And I was so nervous. I was so upset because every time he changes it, it gets everywhere. And I got it. I moved stuff out, got everything moved over. There wasn't a single spill. And I told Marissa, I was like, what is this man doing? Because like every time we go in after he changes it, there's just powder. I remember one day he dropped the magenta and it just all over the copy room. We're still finding some of it today.
yeah.
So is that the big difference? Toner is powder, ink is...
Yeah, and so ink has like, there's like an ink head where the ink goes through and to put it on the page. Toner, it's like flips through all things and then has to go through it's called a fuser, but it's like hot.
Mm-hmm.
It gets really hot, and that's why like printers can overheat and depending on, like toner printers can overheat and things like that. So, and there's lots of different other types of printing too, but for as far as between those two, that's why the toner I like better. It puts dots down of the color, and so that's why you use all three instead of just having like a single color. Do you know what I mean? So that also enables it. And I have this question a lot, like I can't print white. They can do that on some printers now, so it used to not be a thing, but printing white is not a thing. Well, it is now, but not on most older machines. So because it is combining colors, and white is the absence of color. And so you can't just take all the color out, like it's just white. Like that's what it is. So you can't, if I have a black piece of paper, I can't print white on it with my toner based machine or even my ink based machine that I have for signs, because of it just has to be, it just doesn't print there.
But if you're going through and you're printing a design that has white text and a black background on white paper, what's actually happening is it's putting all the black and the white is the space being left.
Like the negative space. Yep. So, there are printers now that have like a white ink cartridge that will actually like print that, which I just don't have the fortune of having one of those yet. But one day,
Yeah.
But
we're all
they're
gonna
super
grow.
cool.
And I know I'm taking us so far down this rabbit hole. Which of the two is the one that has the tendency to run or bleed more? Is that ink or is...
I would say ink, yeah, because it's because of the liquid. Like it'll splatter ink sometimes, like if the print head's not clean, or there's lots of things. And I've done, even like with doing signs, like I've done so much more with paper printing. So like I feel like I understand that one probably a little better than the ink as much. But yeah, so I think...
So like with ink, I think I remember like there's been times where I've gone to print something and 2 pages come out back to back, and then all of a sudden there's the bleed. Yeah. That's not really as big of an issue with toner, but with toner, then you talk about the heat aspect. I know we've had things where it's gotten hot and the roller itself gets remnants of and so then it's on the next thing.
With so many rollers with a toner too, another thing that happens is it's paper, so it's not like a solid material. I mean, it is, but it's not. And it can, that's why they jam, is because there's so many rolls, and it just really like can really mess some stuff up if it keeps going. Because I've done that and broken a fuser because paper gets stuck, and I've taken it apart, and sometimes it just really isn't working very well. Yeah. But toner, another thing it does when it's like misprinting instead of running, is like with the developers and everything, it just has those weird lines like you get, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I could talk about this for hours, but anyway, I've taken the whole printer apart basically.
Yeah. So. We had that at one point here last year. If anybody saw anything, they had 2 blue lines on all of it. Don't worry, it got fixed. But this has been an episode of me just learning how to print. All right, so we've talked about the paper aspects and those. What makes it different when you're printing on paper versus you're printing on wood, you're printing on metal? Why is that not the same, and why does it not take the same time?
It depends on what process of printing you're doing too. So obviously with like a paper printer, you can only get so much thickness through. Even like really thick paper, there's some that won't go through. Envelopes are harder because they have the little thing, some printers are made to do that. And they have lots of machines that are made to do specific certain things if you need it. So it's just like the rollers really mess things up with like the envelopes or like smaller things. Even like I'd rather print on a bigger piece of paper because it's usually there's going to be more rollers touching it, so it's going to go through smoother, that kind of thing. So that's why putting multiple things up on a large piece of paper and cutting them down is much easier in my opinion than trying to print on like putting a postcard in there. It's not going to go well.
Right.
And then as far as then you talk about printing on vinyl. So that's why vinyl is made, like certain types of vinyl are made for, I have an EcoSolve printer. So it's a certain type of ink and you have to buy the right kind of vinyl to print on. So even like different, large format printers, there's different materials you'd have to buy. They all are like the same, but it's like you have to make sure it's going to take the ink that your printer has.
Right.
Because if it doesn't adhere to it, it might look good when it first comes out and then it's going to smear or not hold or, that kind of thing. So, and then the other type of printing I do is sublimation, which is like more printing on cups and metal and wood and that kind of thing. And that's a totally different printer, different ink. You print it. And I have some samples of this that I show people so they understand, like when I print sublimation paper out, it's just like I said, special kind of paper. The ink on it looks like, I was trying to print like a light green the other day. It looked gray when it comes out, and it's like, but then you put it on the heat press and it's like magic. Magic. It just does, it's just like part of the process of how the ink works with the paper and putting it on the, material and things like that.
And this is Alan pulling a word that he knows. Screen printing. How is that different?
So that is a specific color. You have screens that you have each color in, and it's still the dot printing usually like that it uses, but you have specific colors. You don't just have the 4. You have like, okay, this is the teal that we're going to use in this. So there's a lot more color options if you I don't even know if I'd say that because you can make those options in the other thing. It's just a different form of like, okay, I have to choose this color, and this color of ink that I can get to be able to create these things. So you do for each color that you have on like a shirt, and that's why it costs more usually to get more colors on a shirt. If you're just doing white, you can just do white and you run it twice through there and you're good to go. But when it comes to like, we got to have a teal and a blue and this, whatever, you have to run each screen on the shirt in a separate go kind of thing. So
is it mostly screen printing used for clothing?
I mean, I would say mostly that's what people know it for, but there's a whole industry or whatever to do like posters and stuff as like a art effect type. I mean, people do that. Like you can get smaller presses where you can do things like that. There's lots of stuff that you can screen print that most people don't even like think about. I feel like, but yeah, I feel like mostly people think, oh, I'm going to screen print a shirt or a hat or whatever. So is
there any printing you do that I've not touched on yet?
Well, I don't do screen printing, but I worked in a screen printing place, so I know a little bit about that. I'm trying to think that I do. Not really. I mean, we do like the, vinyl that's not printed, that's just cut. So that's a whole, those are, you have to pick a specific color and then cut it and then you can lay it. But yeah, I think that's covered all of them.
Majority of it. Do you have a thing that you love printing more than others?
No.
That's fair.
I like it all.
She likes it all.
I get it. It depends on I think there's projects I like better. Like I get really excited when there's new things. Like, so sublimation, I get excited about because when there's like a new product I'm trying to print on or trying to fit, like I tried to print on leather, which I did figure it out. It's not perfect, but it's kind of cool. Like it's a different effect. Like you can't expect like, oh, this is gonna be like this exact perfect. It's, it changes, I feel like, depending on what type of leather. Same thing with paper. What type of paper you're using, glossy or not, it's going to look different. So there's so many, like, It's a balancing act,
yeah. And I feel like it's one of those things that you just kind of have to know, because trying to describe the difference between glossy and matte, a lot of the times when I'm trying to do, it's like, you can write on that, you can't write on the other. Can you help us get our printer to stable things? It's got the ability, but I'm afraid to do it. There's something in my brain that's like sharp metal and this jams. Anyway. All right. So before we leave, tell everybody where they can find you, all of those pieces.
So I have a brick and mortar on Depot Street. It's 203.5 Depot Street, Christiansburg, Virginia. Well, y'all know that because we're in Montgomery County, but that's okay.
Hey, Montgomery County, Virginia. We do have to be specific.
And then online at blousehouse.org. And our phone number is 540-382-8222.
Awesome. And for those listening, what is something that you would like to maybe have them come into the store, look at something that is on the horizon that you're like, hey, I'd really love to work with your business for this thing?
I would go back to the sublimation because there's so many things you can do with it. So like there's different products. If you have like a weird, quirky idea that you're like, I got to figure out how to do this. Those are my favorite kind of projects to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kasey, for being here. I really appreciate it. Everybody, stay tuned. We're going to have some more episodes soon, so make sure you like, subscribe. Thank you for listening to the first episode of season 2. So that's great. I forgot to mention that at the top. But yeah, like, subscribe, all those things. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and you can listen at montgomerycc.org. In the meantime, please go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.